Welcome to today's War Room Briefing. This is where we step away from our mock draft scenarios and discuss offseason news and how the different storylines might impact the Seahawks, as well as roster building strategies that could come into play. Today's briefing is making the case to extend Derick Hall right now. We all know how important having a strong pass rush is. The 2025 Seahawks had the 7th most sacks and the 2nd most QB pressures, which is a metric that combines sacks, QB hits, and hurries. But the pass rush didn't come from just one big hero edge rusher. It came from waves of solid rushers on the edge and up the middle. We had 4 main contributors off the edge: DeMarcus Lawrence, Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, and the youngest of these, Derick Hall. When you start looking at the contracts and the timelines of those players, the future of the edge position starts to look a little thin. And that's why today we're making the case for extending Derick Hall right now, because within 1 year, 2 things happen. Derick Hall becomes an expensive free agent, and those other 3 players will almost certainly not be on the roster, which increases your dependency on Derick Hall, who's the one holdover from that edge group for the 2025 dark side defense. Let's look at that painful roster reality. DeMarcus Lawrence, already in his mid-30s, could very realistically retire next offseason, assuming he doesn't do that this offseason. Uchenna Nwosu carries a contract that makes him a possible cap casualty if the team needs flexibility right now. And Boye Mafe is widely expected to depart in free agency this week, where he could command somewhere in the range of $16 to $18 million per year, which you'll see why that's important in just a minute. If those things happen, the Seahawks' edge room suddenly looks very different. Instead of a deep rotation, you're looking at something more like Derick Hall, with only 1 year left on his contract, and Jared Ivey, an undrafted guy, but someone I actually expected to get drafted in the 5th or 6th round last year. I think this is a guy who could make a real contribution this year. But beyond that, it will be a lot of question marks. We know that John Schneider never negotiates a contract adjustment or renewal with players who have more than 2 years left on their contract. But right now, Hall is entering the final year of his rookie contract, so we're within that window when John Schneider likes to look at extensions. Seattle has a pattern of extending players 1 year before they hit free agency if the team believes that they are part of the long-term core. Abraham Lucas was a good example of this very recently. Why do they do this? Because waiting can get very expensive. Good players, when they hit free agency, usually end up in the middle of a multi-team bidding war, especially at high-demand positions like edge rusher. That alone drives the price up significantly, but on top of that, if a player breaks out in that final contract year, their market value can skyrocket overnight. Extending early allows a team to lock in talent before the rest of the league drives up the price. So the real question becomes, has Derick Hall shown enough to justify the kind of investment it would take to lock him up for 2 or 3 more years? Let's look at some numbers. This last year, Derick Hall had only 2 sacks in the regular season. Of course, he added 2 more in the Super Bowl, but that's still a fairly low number, and one that plays in the team's favor. However, when evaluating edge rushers, there are other potentially more important metrics than just sacks. Let's look at pass rush win rate. This measures how often a defender beats his blocker. Some outlets put a time frame on it, like within roughly 2.5 seconds. Others, like PFF, just measure whether or not they won their individual battle for each pass play. Here's how some well-known pass rushers in the league stack up. Elite edge rushers typically fall somewhere around 21 to 25% win rate. Solid starters tend to live between 16 to 20%, and rotational guys land around 11 to 15%. In 2025, Derick Hall posted a win rate of about 16% according to PFF. That places him firmly in the solid starting edge rusher tier. And here's the interesting part, that win rate was actually higher than Boye Mafe's, who again is about to depart in free agency most likely. He sat closer to that 11% range. Despite playing fewer snaps, Hall produced nearly the same number of pressures, 1 more actually. In other words, when Hall was on the field, he was winning his snaps, not at a dominant rate, but at a consistent and a respectable rate, and more than Mafe. And this is an important NFL metric that teams pay attention to, because sacks can fluctuate. But players who consistently win their matchups tend to see their sack numbers rise over time. It's like exit velocity in baseball. Win rate, like exit velo, is a leading indicator that will tell you how impactful a player is. Think of seismologists. They don't just study earthquakes, they study the low rumblings of seismic activity. That's a better indicator of when and where the next earthquake might happen. In that sense, Derick Hall is a very productive, solid starting edge rusher, and by all accounts, a great teammate and a leader. He's certainly an inspirational figure when you read about him pulling through after a 1% survival rate. A great Seahawk all around. Now let's talk about what this might cost. Right now, the edge rusher market looks roughly like this. Elite players are making between $30 and $47 million per year. The next tier down, we'll call them the high-end starters, they land around $20 to $30 million. Solid starting edge rushers fall somewhere in the $12 to $20 million range. If Boye Mafe signs for something like $16 or possibly $18 million per year, that becomes an important benchmark for Derick Hall's case. Because if Hall continues to develop and post a strong 2026 season, his market value could easily jump not only into that same range but well above it, potentially into the 20 million plus range. But if Seattle acts early, now, they might be able to sign him for something closer to 10 to 14 million a year. For a solid edge rusher, even a rotational one, that could quickly become a bargain contract. Extending Hall now accomplishes a few things for Seattle. First, it secures a young pass rusher who is very productive as part of that rotation. Second, it stabilizes the defensive front as other veterans potentially move on. And third, it protects the team from the rapidly rising cost of edge rushers across the league. If Hall takes another step forward, say 10 or more sacks in 2026, his price tag could climb above $20 to $25 million very quickly. At that point, extending him becomes possibly too expensive. We see this happen kind of a lot actually around the league. Edge rushers are notorious for developing a little later than most positions. Many of the best pass rushers in the NFL didn't fully break out until years 3 or 4, right before they hit free agency. Some examples I can give you. Seahawks fans will remember Frank Clark, one of our second-round picks years ago. He didn't have his breakout until year 4. We couldn't get an extension done in time because it was so expensive, so we franchised him. This was before the franchise tag for edge rushers exploded, but it was expensive. Hassan Reddick, breakout year in year 5, before changing teams. Trey Hendrickson, breakout year in year 4, right before changing teams. They had their breakout year, they got really expensive, and the team that drafted them couldn't hang on to them, and they went on to play for other teams. Hall is entering exactly that window right now, so extending him today could mean paying before the breakout, which is when teams get the best value, locking him up at a price that becomes a bargain just a couple of years from now. Not every player accepts an early extension. Some players prefer to bet on themselves, hit free agency, and possibly collect a bigger payday. Safety Kobe Bryant, by all accounts, was offered an extension before this last year began, but didn't think it was good enough and preferred to play out the last year on his contract and see what he could get this offseason. We're about to find out very soon what that will look like. So why might some players accept an early extension? There are many reasons, some of them more personal in nature, like family settling down roots, good relationship with the team and staff, but here are 3 important business reasons they might consider. The first and most obvious is the unfortunate reality in the NFL in that players get hurt sometimes. The last thing Derick Hall would want is to have a significant injury in a contract year that would drastically lower the amount he could sign for. So this becomes a protection against potential injury. Next, this might be the most attractive reason. Usually when a player signs an extension, there's a signing bonus and guaranteed money. The signing bonus is usually paid out right away, so there's no waiting until the new years take hold. They get paid right away. And sometimes teams convert some of their current base salary into guaranteed money, which is also very attractive. The third reason is timing. Derick Hall is about to turn 25 years old, which is really just entering the prime of his career. He will likely get better over the next 3 or 4 years, and if he were to take a contract extension now, say for another 3 years, he would play out his final year, then play under the new 3 years. His contract would expire right as he turns 29. Many players prefer to have another contract negotiation before they hit 30 years old, because statistically after that, contracts get smaller as the player gets older. So this could be the time for Derick Hall to do that. So the case for extending Derick Hall isn't just about rewarding a promising young player. It's about timing. It's about understanding the edge rusher market, and it's about securing the future of the Seahawks pass rush before Father Time and the rest of the league drains it all away. Extending Derick Hall now secures at least one piece of the dark side defense for the next several years, while our Super Bowl window remains wide open. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and thank you for joining us for this briefing inside the 12's War Room.